So hello there, welcome to Damien's Trains and Travels and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be reviewing the Wallace and Gromit Corgi anti-pesto van and the Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which is when this van first appeared. It came out in 2005, which makes it 20 years old this year. And when I was younger I did quite like the Curse of the Were-Rabbit film. However, as you know, over Christmas Vengeance Most Foul was out, and in my opinion I thought Vengeance Most Foul was much better. And when Curse of the Were-Rabbit was made, it was made in association with DreamWorks, who is an American company, and then years later, Aardman parted ways with them, and which I think is a good thing, really, because I think particularly with Wallace and Gromit, if you look in the background, there's lots of British sort of sense of humour, and the Americans obviously have a different sense of humour to what we do. So I suppose really, particularly Vengeance Most Foul, it's more the British sort of humour that we in the UK are used to and like. And again, that's what I've always liked about Wallace and Gromit, and I've always said, obviously, you always see them sitting down having a cup of tea and just seeing like the inside of the house and that. But although we're not Northerners, and my nan wasn't, it sort of reminded me of when I used to go around my nan's house when I was younger. Unfortunately, my nan passed away 10 years ago. And also you had, particularly in Vengeance Most Foul, which is obviously the film that came out recently, you had references to Snoozy Chock, which was also seen in the background of The Wrong Trousers, and Vengeance Most Foul was technically a sequel to The Wrong Trousers. As I was saying, I like Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I think Vengeance Most Foul was much better, but I think Curse of the Were-Rabbit, it was still a good film, and I think that it worked because Wallace and Gromit were in it. Whereas, if it had been new characters, I don't think it would have worked as well. I mean, they did Early Man a few years ago, Aardman Animations, who obviously made Wallace and Gromit and a number of other characters. But I didn't think as much to Early Man personally. Like I said, for me, the Wallace and Gromit films that they produce are always the best. But that's my personal opinion. Something else that I noticed in Vengeance Most Foul, if you look carefully in the background on Wallace's wall, there's a traction engine, and part of me would like to believe it's Trevor from Thomas the Tank Engine, although it probably isn't. And there's also a train scene on the shelf, and again, as you know, I love things all railway related, so for me that was definitely a winner. And I'd still say The Wrong Trousers was my favourite film, mainly because of the train chase scene. And Corgi released a set of the train chase last year, which I did a review about. And again, if you go onto my channel, if you look onto playlists, there is a playlist of Wallace and Gromit videos on my channel, featuring all the videos that I've spoken about in Wallace and Gromit collection, or where they appear in the background. And again, one of the funny things as well is if you watch Vengeance Most Foul, if you look carefully in the background, on one of the pegs in the hallway at Wallace and Gromit's house, there's a flat cap and raincoat on one of the pegs, and that's a reference to Peter Sallis. And that was a reference to Clegg in Last Summer Wine, who wore a flat cap and raincoat, which was nice. And then also, it's quite funny as well, the farmer from Shaun the Sheep, he made a cameo 3 times in the film. You see him in the crowd scene in the background, you see him in the museum scene in the background, even though he's not dressed up for the occasion. It's funny, some of the characters in the background, they're not really dressed up for the occasion, really. It's obviously quite a special event. The Blue Diamond going back on display. And then also you see him in one of the scenes near the end, when they're trying to catch Feathers McGraw in the field. And also, in the Curse of the Were-Rabbit, we first meet PC Macintosh, and he then goes on to appear in Vengeance Most Foul as well, but a lot older, and now Chief Inspector. And he was also voiced by Peter Kay. And Peter Kay was also the voice of Big Chris in Rory the Racing Car, which is a children's TV show, and recently I actually got some more cars in that range, which I'll be talking about another time. And they're all out of the boxes, but like I said, I've kept this one in the box. And obviously, as you know, I collect a number of things that I keep in the boxes as well, for collection purposes. So like I said, this is in the box, but you can still see through the box. So you've got 2 figures of Wallace and Gromit, and Wallace is wearing his anti-pesto outfit. And then Gromit's got his hat and boots on, and it makes me laugh, really, particularly in the new film Vengeance Most Foul. You see Gromit wearing his dressing gown, but then half the time he walks around naked anyway, although he does wear headgear and other things as well, sometimes as well. And another thing I'm saying is, obviously this was released in association with Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and this year A Close Shave, which was one of the short films that Wallace Gromit appeared in, is actually 30 years old, and I thought it'd be nice if Corgi released a model of the motorbike and sidecar. But then again, there's been things that I've mentioned on this channel that have happened, and also, I suppose, what you might call a bit of a curse when there's been shops that have appeared in the background, like the Heart Foundation in my local town, which is also now closed down as well. And funny enough, 10 years ago, I did actually volunteer there. I was there for about 3 years. I mean, I call it work. I was volunteering. I didn't get paid for it. It's just mainly something to put on my CV, really. But I was there for 3 years, the Heart Foundation. That's closed now. And it's a bit of a shame, really, because in charity shops I used to find cars and figures and things like that for my collection, which I collect at a reasonable price and still good quality. And there's been a lot of charity shops, sand shops in general, that have closed down over the years. And again, it's like the train chase set Wallace and Gromit brought out. I remember, I mean, there's not all that many model shops around here local to me, but I remember like years ago there used to be a number of model shops that I used to go to, actual shops, and there's not so many of them now. And again, it's a bit like the latest Wallace and Gromit film, and again, compared to the Curse of the Were-Rabbit, I remember the Curse of the Were-Rabbit being in cinemas, and again I've got on DVD, whereas obviously this new film that's just come out, Vengeance Most Foul, it's only been on Netflix, and it was on BBC One on Christmas Day. It's not been in the cinema, and again, things are just changing because of obviously stuff's online now, and I mean it is quite expensive to go to the cinema as well, unfortunately, compared to what it used to be, and the theatre and things like that. So things are changing. And I think it's a bit of a shame, really, because I mean, personally, it is, I do internet shopping, I admit, but and it is good because, like I said, you can go on eBay or Amazon or whatever, and you can more or less find whatever you're looking for, really. But then I also used to find it was nice to go into a shop and actually see something on the shelf and pick it up as well. But sometimes, I do buy stuff online because it is cheaper. But then, like I said, sometimes in the shops now there isn't that much variety compared to what there used to be, really. Some of them don't order stuff in like they used to, which I think is a bit of a shame again because it's hard to compete with the internet. So again, it's all sort of changed really since I was sort of growing up. But like I said, so you've obviously got the figures of Wallace and Gromit, you've got the bun vac, and in the film the sides of the back of the van drop down and the bun vac come out, and it was a humane way for them to gather pests. And obviously then you've got the van as well, and the van looks fairly immaculate, and I've got the remote control car model of it as well. And in the film there was some weathering on the van, there were signs of rust, some where the paint worn and things like that. But then this van is mostly immaculate, but then if you look very carefully, particularly around the wheel arch, they've had bits of weathering on. And in my opinion, the weathering, it has to be done to a certain way. It shouldn't just like it's just been painted on. And I think unfortunately on this van where they have put the weathering on, it looks like it's just sort of been added on. It doesn't look very well, whereas Corgi a couple of years ago released a set with other Austin A35 vans because they've been used for, again, different businesses that Wallace and Gromit have had over the years. And again, the latest film is No Improvements, and No Improvements isn't included in this, but I would actually like it if they did actually do a model of the No Improvement service as well. But overall, I do think the van's very nice. And again, something that I noticed in the background of this new film, Gromit's going up the stairs, if you look carefully, you can see the anti-Pesto logo. And there's also, so obviously that was a reference to the Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And again, if you look in the background, some of the characters from the Curse of the Were-Rabbit and Mrs. Mulch as well appear in the background. And like I said, there's been other, if you look carefully in the background, you can see other characters from the Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Or it looks very similar to some of them anyway. And also, something I noticed as well is I've got the Curse of the Were-Rabbit on DVD. And if you look in the credits, I'm assuming the credits are all the same, but Ben Whitehead, who voiced Wallace in Vengeance Most Foul, he was at the bottom of the credits in Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and now by Vengeance Most Foul he's now at the top. And Peter Kay was also sort of not down the bottom, but sort of not far from the top, whereas this one he's second in the credits in Vengeance Most Foul, so they've both sort of gone up compared to the Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And then as you look to the left in this photo, you can see Mr. Leachin, who is who Ben White has voiced in Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And originally Wallace was voiced by Peter Sallis, who unfortunately passed away in 2017, so it'd be coming up to 8 years. But I think Ben Whitehead did a great job voicing Wallace in the new film, and it does sound just like Peter Sallis in some ways. I think he's really mastered the voice, because if you watch like some of the TV adverts originally, you can tell that it wasn't Peter Sallis, but now the voice is, he has sort of made it his own now. But at the same time, although I'd say I miss Peter Sallis, I still think Ben did a great job. And I remember seeing in an interview Peter Sallis did. He said that the show's obviously going to go on without him one day, sort of thing. And he, and there is an old saying, obviously the show must go on, and I'm sure he would like to carry on. Obviously, I'm grateful that it carried on as well. And it was obviously great to see Wallace and Gromit again, even if Peter Sallis wasn't there, unfortunately. And I suppose as well with Vengeance Most Foul, again talking about that film, I like the fact that Feathers McGraw came back, who was the penguin in the wrong trousers. And I always thought it was on the cards because I get the magazines as well, and he appeared in them, and also in the magazines, because the magazines were released between 2005 2007. You saw a number of the other characters again, so PC Macintosh and even the anti-Pesto van I've got here appearing a lot. But I always believe that the magazines and the films are two separate things. And again, going on to the Curse of the Rabbit film, like I said, when I was younger, I really enjoyed it. But I think it was aimed at a more younger market. I mean, I was 12 when it came out. So, obviously I probably fell into that sort of target audience. But like I said, having seen like other films since then, and even A Matter of Life and Death, and like I said, Vengeance Most Foul, I thought they were better. And definitely Vengeance Most Foul, I think, was better than obviously both of them two films, A Matter of Life and Death and The Curse of the Rabbit. Like I said, Wrong Trousers is probably still my favourite one. But like I said, yeah, I love this model overall. I think it is very nice. Like I said, I think they should have just left the model immaculate, really, rather than put weathering on it, because I don't think the weathering is that good. But like I said, on the Top Bun van, which was one of the other ones that was released a couple of years ago, they've obviously got some weathering on it, like again it did in the film, and in my opinion that looks a lot better. But then I've noticed, particularly with Corgi over the years, if you look at their models over the years, I think the detail and the quality has improved quite a lot. But I still really like this model, and I believe this model is discontinued now. But I do recommend that you get it if you can. No, if you look online, again, if you look online, you can still get it. And obviously, I was talking about British humour. In one of the Wallace and Gromit adverts, you see them eating pies. And Wallace and Gromit, as you probably know, a lot of the films are based in Wigan. And again, when you see like the narrowboat scenes, and again, that's what I loved about Vengeance Most Foul, the fact that you've got narrowboats, a train, obviously all the other vehicles as well. So for me, it's about the vehicles as much as Wallace and Gromit themselves, But for me, that was a highlight. But again, if you look at the scenery in the background, if you've ever sort of been sort of up northwest sort of thing, the sets look very, very similar to that as well. It's sort of like you feel like you're almost there, even though you're watching an animated film. And something that I learned in this DVD that I've got, and as you can see, I've got this DVD about canals. And there was another series which was presented by Matthew Corbett, who was the presenter of Sooty originally. And from what I heard, when he sold Sooty, he was just glad to get him off of his hands. But anyway, I've got this DVD, and Matthew Corbett wasn't the presenter. Unfortunately, the presenter was Fred Talbot, the weatherman. And unfortunately, Fred Talbot turned out to be a nonce. But I'm not easily offended, and I still thought, it's obviously a shame what happened, but he was a good presenter of the show. And in one of these canal journeys, he goes to Wigan. And Wigan's actually famous for its pies, which I didn't really realise until I sort of watched this. But like I said, that is obviously referenced in one of the Wallace and Gromit TV adverts they did for Empower, the pies. So again, they've got a very sort of northern sort of and British tradition. And again, I think that's what I like, sort of going up that sort of area. You sort of, to me, it's a bit of a different world, really. I mean, I'm sort of East Midlands area. Whereas, say, you go up north and they've obviously got their traditions, and I sort of love that sort of thing. And I think there's some lovely places up in the north, obviously railways as well, as that I've been to over the years. But going back onto this model, like I said, comes with two figures of Wallace and Gromit, and I'd say, obviously with Wallace, he's well known for his cheesy grin with his teeth sticking out, and this one he's smiling and he doesn't have his teeth sticking out. But again, we do see him in that film, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and other films, smile sometimes without his teeth sticking out. So I suppose at the same time it is a good model, and it's something a little bit different compared to a lot of other Wallace figures where his teeth are showing. Obviously this one isn't. But like I said, I still think it's a good model nevertheless. And obviously the size of these are a lot different to the train chase ones, which are obviously a lot bigger. Obviously in scale, as obviously the train set's meant to be smaller than Wallace and Gromit, whereas the van's, not bigger than Wallace and Gromit, but, in scale with them. But to conclude, like I said, I think this is a great model, and I definitely recommend that you get it if you haven't. Thank you very much for watching. Obviously, if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, please comment below. And thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.